Hey, what's up? It's Benny J from Stillwork, and we're looking at an As Misery Fades track here, sent over from Jeffrey. I've cleaned this track up a bit and changed some of the bussing and multing, and I'm using my own plugins here as opposed to some of the stuff that I didn't have that Jeff sent over. So what we're going to look at here is what exactly I did to kind of clean this up a little bit and do a lot of the same similar vocal processing that I would have done on some of the previous recordings, as well as just a basic band mix. We've got a pretty simple drum, bass, stereo guitar with a lead, and there's a small break riff happening. That's all that's happening for the music bed. The vocals in each different color are where I've malted and bussed them. Malting meaning to multiply out to different tracks. Predominantly with the malting that I'm doing, you're going to have a single vocal happening at a time on the bus. So I've got main A and main B. Those are basically A-B vocals. Those are going to be sent down a single pipe. That's that yellow pipe. This red pipe is Mark's singing vocals happening in the chorus. That's a single pipe bus. These purple ones here are the doubles. There's a double happening for the pre-chorus, and there are some chorus high accents happening. Again, it kind of looks like an A-B across that track. And these pink ones down here are the various dubs, doubles, highs and lows, some accents, some low stuff doubling up in the chorus. Some of these do overlap down here at the end of the song, but those are going through the pink bus. So to take a look at the first thing that I did with this track when it came in, let me bring up the mixer. And Jeff had his buses being sent as sends. Now this is a common mistake that does happen in Logic. It will work if you send to a bus or send to an aux and you turn off your output routing. Predominantly you would use that if you were going to be doing parallel processing. I've changed all of the busing to be true busing, so we're outputting these main vocals into bus 3. Bus 3 is over here for vocals, color-coded. Each different color code here corresponds to the bus down here, and we're using auxiliary buses for sends for effects. So the only auxiliaries that we have is a reverb. That's a simple plate right here, preset plate. I don't think I changed any of the settings. We're using an 11 millisecond pre-delay. That's good. Might increase that a little bit. And we're using soar for tape delay. We are on the host sync, so that is to tempo, and the mix is on full for both of those buses. All of these vocal buses are being sent down to this all vocal bus right here. All of our music, that includes the riffs, the drums, and the bass, is being sent to this track bus. And then both of these are being sent down our stereo bus output. So let's take a quick listen to what the song sounds like right here. I'm going to jump right before verse 1.
We
Okay, so that's what our mix is sounding like. Sounds pretty good. It's pretty dense. There's not a lot happening for extra frills with the music. We got basically left and right guitar. Let's take a quick peek at those. What I did on these guitars, super simple. Most of these tracks have been reset to a 0, so we have proper gain staging. We've got pretty decent track levels coming in. Jeff did a great job of engineering these, and they look like we've got a little bit hotter than your typical negative 18 dB. But these are sitting perfectly fine. I don't see any clipping. All the tracks sound nice and clean. We've got just guitar. We've got raw guitar DIs. I stripped out what was there and just threw on Helix. I'm using a simple version of the Rev Purple on here. The drive is turned down a little bit. I'm using the Cali V30 cab. That sounds great. We are using, this is the default settings on here. They're using the ribbon mic, which sounds great. We could do a lot more with the guitars, but this is a pretty simple way to jump in and make it sound really good. We threw a gate on the front end. That's just adjusted so that we're trimming off those silences with the guitar. And I did go back and throw a distortion pedal just before the amp. The Rev doesn't really need it, but it is a way to just kind of push the mid-range a little bit more beforehand. So with this is when you want to drop the drive down a little bit more on the amp. So super simple amp setting. Let's see what that sounds like with no bussing. We're going to turn off our channel group guitar bus effects right here. So here's our guitar tone. We got pretty much the same thing happening for the other guitar. Just a nice meaty, heavy tone. And then we're pushing those down, the guitar bus. So what are we going to do with that guitar bus? Make sure on your bus settings when you're using true busing that you do make sure that you've got this input as a stereo so our panning comes through correctly. First thing we're going to throw on there is an equalizer. This equalizer is trimming down the low end. I'm using a 75 hertz high pass. We're doing a small dip at 300 in that resonance zone, and we're using an SSL style top end boost. This is a high shelf, and what this shelf is going to do is really come all the way down through the mid-range here. And what this almost functions to me when you're using an SSL channel style EQ to push up the highs, almost no matter where you set the high frequency thing, it's almost acting more like a tilt to me. So this is our first stage with the guitar of just kind of brightening them up, not so much because the guitars need brightening, but because in a dense mix we've got to get this high end really coming through. So let's take a listen to that and then we'll add it in. Here's our guitars. Let's add in that EQ. With it off. So we're just tightening that up a little bit. Then Jeff had this classic C4 on here before. I kept this. This is basically just your chug eliminator there. Right in the chug zone, a little dynamic EQ, tightening that stuff up with it off. And that really helps with the chugs so that they don't just start overtaking your bussing and eating up all that low mids. And then we are using the JST bus glue on here. This is with it off. In the clamp zone, dark tone, more harmonics. And we're just kissing it. And that one's brightening up the track like I would typically use a LA3A style bus compressor on the guitars to kind of just really drive them forward and make them really front and center. That's our guitar bus. The bass, what do we got happening? Let's see here. With the bass bus off, we've got a simple we're using parallax, stock settings, a couple of tweaks, a little less high drive, a little more lows, pushing up 500 here, grind it out a bit. We're following that with the BX Opto, grabbing about 2 dB to smooth out that track, and then we're throwing that through a bass bus. The bass bus is grabbing the JST bus glue. This is on the high method right here, so that's just compressing the highs with it off, with it on, and then we're just following that with the limiter. That's all the limiter is doing here, is keeping us locked in at -10. Trimming about 4 off there. Doesn't really change the tone too much, just keeps it nice and solid through the master bus. On drums, we took this MIDI file and we pumped it through the Perfect Drums we're using here. This is just what I had quickly on hand. Love the sound. And what we're doing on this one, throwing it through a bus comp. These are pretty processed drums, so that's just trying to bring up a little bit more of the cymbals and stuff through there. And we're following that with L2 for some clean limiting. Just making sure we don't peak out here. All together, we've got our track coming through. A little bit of clean post compression here. This is just a blend of peak and RMS, and this is pretty clean. We're not trying to get any extra distortion or anything here. I'm just trying to control the band together a little bit, and not even so much glue as much as just control the peaks going into the post processing. Post processing we have left on here for this. I'm going to go through that a little bit later, but let's jump into the vocals. That's really what we're here for. How do we get these vocals to sound tight and produced? What did I do?
It's time to make you fucking pay for all your greed and gluttony.
It's real simple. We take our lead vocals and we make sure that they're tight. So we're going to zoom right in and we're going to look at how those vocals are being edited. And we're looking for tight consonants to the grid and making sure that we have our vocals right on the beat.
It's time to make you fucking pay for all your greed and gluttony.
In our dubs here, you can see how I've tightened them and moved them around. I've also done time stretching on stuff like this here, where the overlay is short. You can just grab your option and drag that out to make sure that you are tight to where your pieces finish and end. And this is what we've done through this first verse, and tightened up all of these pieces so that our dubs and our vocals are tight. There's a little bit of accelerating of the beat happening in some of these phrases, so I've spaced those out and then moved our words around just a little bit to tighten them up with the various phrases. And then I've ran through the whole first verse to tighten that up, and I've left verse 2 open. So here we are on verse 2, and I'm gonna do that edit right now so we can see exactly what I would do. So let's take a quick look in. Hey! Okay, so Mouth of Serpents. What's going on in here? We're tightening. We're getting way fast. These last two words right here are way ahead of the beat. So we've got to space these out. We're going to trim these pieces at some of these specific words and make sure that we can space them out accordingly and line them up. These right here, we're going to turn off our snap. Move these onto the beat. Move these onto the beat. Slice this in so that we don't get the next section. And get rid of some of this extra fat. This is the most important part, I think, about getting these things sounding good and tight. Making sure that you don't have words jumping ahead of the beat and making sure that your dubs are on point. So this is a lot of manual activity just to get this stuff nice and tight. Doing most of this stuff just visually. Not even listening back. Serpents is still way ahead of the beat. You can see the more that you tighten up the front end of the section, the more obvious that it's out of time. As we put these things in line, it's going to start sounding really nice. A lot of clicking around here to make this happen. And then down here, this one here is rushed. We're gonna mute that one for right now. Make sure we got these together. Okay, so that one is nice and tight right now. We didn't do any stretching. We just moved the consonants around so all the transients are on the beat. Then we got this one here. We're gonna move this track up so we can see it and we can visually knock this one in line. Let's separate these here.
We got 2 more things for that house. And I bet there better be 2 more things down.
Alright, we gotta get this one over lined up with these other ones. We can shorten that using Option and squish it in a little bit. This one here, move that in line. I think that one's gonna suffice. This one here, it's gonna work. Something like that. Something like this. First word might still be a little bit out. Let's bring in our dub. Okay, there it is. That's an example of the edits that you got to do to make these things sound nice and tight if they don't come through that way. Let's jump over to this second verse and see what's happening with that first piece. Okay, scraps is a little early. Let's jump in there. And you can see it starts right about here. Let's trim this over here. Manual editing, it's pretty much just the bread and butter of audio work. Pro Tools level. It's what we do. Okay, scraps I cut off a little bit too much, so we want to clean that up. There's a little pre-word happening here. That's just like rolling into the vocals. Some of this garbage here. You can take the lead and leave the lead one and get rid of it happening on some of the dubs and stuff. If you need to fade that in, you can fade those in. But if you leave it just on the main vocal, it's going to sound tighter. Okay, so that was just an example of the editing. I already did the first verse. I left the second verse so I could show it here, and the rest of the dubs and stuff I haven't done that with. So the rest of the song is not edited vocally. The other main thing that I've done here is on Mark's lead vocals. I have tuned those. Let's take a quick listen to a chorus and watch the tuning.
Wake up from the violence and deception. As our cities turn to rust, it's time for us to wake up, and remember you are no exception.
Still a big fan of Waves Tune. It's my favorite vocal correction that I work with right now. Still my favorite, easiest to use, sounds the best and the most natural. So I tuned up those lead vocals. Let's jump into processing. What are we doing for processing on these vocals to make them sound pretty dope? Again, gain staging is one of the most important things that you want to do on your tracks and your tracks into bussing. But I'm going to take you through a quick example of the basics of what I'm going to do here. First, we're going to take our vocal bus processing and we're going to turn these guys off. Next, we're going to take a listen to our vocals coming through from the first verse, and we're going to turn off what I've got happening on the first verse. I'm also going to be muting my other buses, chorus vocals, dubs, and I think that's it. Yeah. All right, let's take a listen to this first verse.
It's time to make you fucking pay for all your greed and gluttony. You stuff your face on the backs of the way, unhinged your jaw and bare your teeth. I'm toxic, man, I'm known as hate. My false lies, I don't know nothing.
Okay, so that's the raw tracking. I don't think there was any processing coming through, but you can see at the front end here, at the beginning of these vocals, you've got a little more volume than you've got happening later down here. That could be because voice is getting lost. It could be because being close to the mic. Whatever. We're not going to manually adjust those with clip gain or anything like that. We're just going to handle it on the track level. So the very first thing that I'm going to do is just grab a compression. And what we're doing with this compression is we are controlling the volume dynamics of the channel. We are taking the widely dynamic vocals and we're making them not so dynamic. What you're listening for with this is intelligibility of the vocals coming through and that we're not missing words. So where you can hear these words down here are getting lost and we can't hear them, we need to bring those up and make them audible. We also want to keep this nicely leveled so that it's not jumping out or peaking. With scream vocals, you're already kind of leveled to a degree with the tone. Regular singing vocals can be so dynamic that one or two words can just pop out of the mix. And we want to kind of control these so that nothing's popping out and we can hear everything across all of the dynamics of the vocals. First thing I'm going to reach for is just a simple compressor. I would normally go for a Renaissance compressor. I would add that in using my standard settings, which are very similar to the factory vocal setup. And I would be adjusting my attack and release just to kind of match in with the specifics of the style. We'll use those stock settings here and show you how that levels out.
It's time to make you fucking pay for all your greed and gluttony. You stuff your face on the backs of the weak, unhinged your jaw and bare your teeth. I'm toxic, man.
Okay, so automatically, that's 90% of it there. Renaissance compressor, grabbing about 10 to 15 decibels of reduction is going to get you 99% of the way there to having leveled vocals on your tracks in almost every situation. Love it. Can't get enough of it. I chose not to go with it on this one, though. My next thing I would work with would be LA2A. That style of compression is going to be really smooth, really easy to work with. I like to do this on the recording chain coming in hardware, preferred. Easy way to make sure that the vocalist can hear themselves and it doesn't damage the tracks in any way. You can never hear it. So
it's time to make you fucking pay for all your greed and gluttony. You stuff your face on the backs of the weak, unhinge your jaw and bare your teeth. Pump toxic venom through their veins.
okay, that sounds great. I could keep that and stick with that. We're grabbing about 8 to 10 decibels of reduction on the VU here. But I decided to jump to the 1176 style and just get a little more of that type of aggression that happens with this style compressor right off the bat. Leveling with that sounds like this.
It's time to make you fucking pay for all your greed and gluttony. You stuff your face on the backs of the weak, unhinge your jaw and bare your teeth. Pump toxic venom through their veins. Fly false flags, I don't numb the pain. Divide right up cases the fallacy. Will purchase the lunacy.
You can hear a little bit getting lost right here. So that's the heavy lifting, is just the track compressor on the track. Those are getting sent down the bus, and there's more stuff happening on the bus compressor to kind of tune those in. So the other thing I've got happening on the track level is a gate on the front end. Just using C1 on here.
It's time to make you fucking pay for all your greed and gluttony. You stuff.
And this is just cleaning up some of these extra little tail things there. You can hear a lot of noise in the tracks in sections like this. So without having to do extreme editing, a gate on the front end of each track is working super good. So those are going to be sent down the vocal bus processing. What am I doing at the vocal bus processing? Let's take a look. First thing in line.
It's time to make you fucking pay for all your greed and gluttony. You stuff your face on the backs of the weak, unhinge your jaw and bare
Okay,
your...
we need some brightness with the vocals. We're using a high shelf up here. Pumping up 6 dB at 8K. We're using a low cut down here at 100, and this mud frequency around 400, just dipping a little bit of that out. Always helps at the bus level to be dropping some of those low mids because there's a lot of buildup if you're stacking a lot of tracks in there. We're not stacking a lot of tracks together. We're mostly doing ABs, so it's a single vocal generally coming through the bus. Next thing in line is going to be, we're using our comp down the line here. So we're taking our track compression right here, where we're grabbing a good healthy dose of gain reduction, and we're pumping that through the leveling of Renaissance compressor here.
It's time to make you fucking pay for all your greed and gluttony. You stuff your face on the backs of the weak, unhinge your jaw.
Let's see if we lose this section here.
Pump toxic venom through their veins. Fly false flags, I don't numb the pain. Divide.
Numb the pain. Still coming, still getting a little bit lost there. There might be a little overlap happening there. Something's missing that. Numb the pain. I don't hear the P. Next thing in line, Novel Tech. Love this thing. Simple way to get the brightness of vocals without doing too much work. This is working super great in this track. Let's take a listen to what that sounds like without it.
It's time to make you fucking pay for all your greed and gluttony. You stuff your face on the backs of the weak, unhinge your jaw and bare your teeth.
What we're doing here is just trying to pump up that high end and the intensity of the saturation in that upper end. Get that nice studio polished vocal happening now. Now that we brightened stuff up, we need to get some de-essing happening. We're using DMG's Essence.
It's time to make you fucking pay for all your greed and gluttony. You stuff your face
And with the de-esser, generally what I'm doing is just hitting the threshold until I can either see or hear the S's turning into what sounds like lisping vocals, and backing off of it enough where it's still clear. Sometimes you'll stack de-essers on different frequencies, or I'll like to use sibilants from waves later in the chain, which handles it in a little bit of a different way, or using different styles of either dynamic EQ, dynamic compression, de-essers, or some of the more advanced tools like transient shapers to make sure that the stuff's not coming through too harsh. This is doing a good job right here of taking care of the S's that we need. And then we're saturating additionally with Spectre. We have de-emphasis enabled, so we're not adding any EQ here. We're just adding harmonics in these different regions. We've got the intelligibility band of the vocals right here, making sure that we can clearly hear the words. And we're boosting up that top range again, so we're going more and more to that studio polished vocal sound, high-end studio tube mic action. And what we're doing across all of this multiple compression and saturation that we have, we've got 2 or 3 different stages going on here in different styles, is getting a more enhanced, deep, filling in the harmonic regions of those screaming vocals, filling in all the little holes. Let's take a listen to it without Spectre, then add it in.
It's time to make you fucking pay for all your greed and gluttony. You stuff your face on the backs of the weak, unhinge your jaw and bare your teeth. From toxic venom through the veins, blind false light.
The shirt we did here with our B vocal. Accidentally boosted that volume way up.
It's time to make you fucking pay for all your greed and gluttony. You stuff your face on the backs of the weak.
Random mouse wheel action. Okay, so Spectre's in there, and then we're following this with an L1 to trim back any peaks that happen with all that processing.
It's time to make you fucking pay for all your greed and gluttony. You stuff your face on the backs of the weak, unhinge your jaw and bare your teeth. Pump toxic venom through the veins, blind false lights, I do numb the pain.
And L1, when used kind of aggressively, can also add a little bit of extra grit that works out kind of nice. Okay, so let's take a look at what we're doing with these dub tracks, dub channels, dub vocals, and seeing what it is that's making them work in the double fashion. Here's an example of some highs coming through right at the beginning. We've got our A-B vocal, and we've got some highs popping in.
Make you fucking pay for all your greed and gluttony. You stuff your face on the backs of the weak, unhinge your jaw and bare your teeth.
There's some lows popping in. I had reordered these a little bit earlier, so let's move those back down. Okay, so what we're doing with these on the track level is the same thing as our main vocals. We've got a gate going on. We're using the same 1176 style compression, pulling off somewhere between 8 and 10 decibels of reduction. And then we are additionally using Decapitator for some extreme some mid-level saturation, and then we're limiting that after it with a clean limiter. So let's take a look at these here.
For all your greed and gluttony.
Here's with Decapitator off,
For all your greed and gluttony.
Decapitator on.
For all your greed and gluttony.
So we're trying to get a little bit of distortion happening there. And then we're trimming that back with this limiter
For all your greed and gluttony.
to make sure it sounds nice and tight coming through our bus. Now, these highs and lows are being processed the same way.
Unhinge your jaw and bare your teeth.
And those are coming through our dubs bus. The dubs bus is virtually identical to the lead vocal bus. Equilibrium on there. High pass, high boost, and a little bit of low mid cut. Renaissance compressor, tightening it up. A little bit of a higher ratio here, and a little bit deeper of a threshold, so that we can level those out even more. We want these super leveled under our lead vocals. Vocal enhancer from Noveltech. Same thing, it's brightening up our upper mid-range. We're using Essence. And this is a little bit deeper of a threshold. You don't need those S's to come out quite as clear on your dub tracks. They can be distracting, especially if they're even slightly off time. L1. Protection at -10. And then we're using side widener here. This is the key for these dubs, to stick them out on the sides of our lead vocal. Side widener off. Side widener on. And when you're listening to those with the lead vocal, you can choose which mode here works best and how wide you want those. Depending on what other instruments you've got doing different stereo things, depending on which vocal stacks that you've got where you're using various widening techniques, these three modes step through kind of a different frequency balance of which frequencies are being pushed out to the sides. This is one method of doubling or stereo widening. I'm using it super subtle, but I could already hear when I step through those, I could jack that up quite a bit. The wider you get, it can have a little bit of a volume boost. They've got this great trim section here, so you can kind of get a equal loudness mode going. That sounds nice. Right in this section here, I can hear some high frequency ringing or resonation happening. It's a resonance issue that I'm hearing right now, but I might use a simple tool to try to find that resonation, or just EQ it in. It's in the upper high mid range. Super bothersome. I'm not sure if it's because those high dubs are slightly off time and there's some sort of phasing happening there. That could be exactly what it is. If we mute it, it might even be in the guitar. Another issue for another time. But that's what's happening in those dub tracks. We have these other doubles happening. These purple ones here. Accents are going on. So this is a double of the lead vocal. I'm not just straight up doubling it. I'm sending it to a double bus. What that double bus is doing Okay, so with this double, What that one's doing is going through this chorus vocal bus, and that's just being dimmed down with the volume control back a little bit more. These are happening over this section here in the pre-chorus and this section of the chorus. During the chorus, there's some doubles happening, which are down here. These are these pink ones. These dubs here, those are also using side widener. Same basic processing. It's just at a little bit of a different level, because in the chorus, just doing something a little bit different with that. So again, with side widener here, I had that boosted a little bit more, a little bit wider on the chorus, trying to get something a little bit bigger going on. And that's one of the great things about multing out different sections of the songs, is you might be using the same basic processing in your dubs for the verses, your dubs for the choruses, but if you send each of those to a different bus, you can change your processing for each section and kind of step through the song that way. And it's a great way to easily build through the song, or easily create some excitement or depth or growth across the timeline. All of that stuff is being dumped down this all vocal channel, and this bus is where we put the bus glue vocals from JST. So we can see what's happening after that processing in that bus. We're going through another bus, and we're grabbing 2 or 3 dB here in a transparent mode using the soft. And what this is going to do is, when we stack all these other buses in there, those are all coming together and kind of getting glued up there. So I'm going to unlock those other buses.
It's time to make you fucking pay for all your greed and gluttony. You stuff your face on the backs of the way on in Georgia and bare your teeth. I'm toxic venom through the veins. Fly fast flies, I do nothing.
And this is another application where C4 with that kind of chug killer setting can work on vocals in the post busing. Because that's also, you build up from multiple vocal channels coming through, and really getting some extra build up right there. So let's take a look at what that looks like coming out of our master bus and the processing that we're using there. I'm going to turn off the processing on the master bus and listen to all that stuff that we've talked about so far and see what's happening. Let's take a look at a chorus. Okay, first thing that we're going to do is we're going to throw on an equalizer, this EQ. Little brightness, a little less mud, a little tiny bit of bass here, and we're using a low cut on there. Then we're going through our bus compression, SPL iron, kissing that. We're using the air bass mode on here. It's a quick fix to just get that sound. Here's with it off. Quick fix for that kind of polished bus comp sound. Next up, we've got C4. Jeff had this on here, and it really sounded nice. I just changed some of the settings and brought the threshold up.
We're begging for the scraps. Fall from the mouths of serpents. We'll bite the hand that feeds. And there will be no
A little bit obnoxious, but it's making it super tight. And then I've got L2 on the end, just trimming us back to our max ceiling.
We're begging for the scraps. Fall from the mouths of serpents. We'll bite the hand.
Not seeing any attenuation.
And there will be no regrets.
So that's on there just basically as a final stage protection. Of course, it was bypassed.
We're begging for the scraps. Fall from the mouths.
Still no attenuation. So there you have it. That's the basic mix that I did here for this demo, possibly potentially album track from As Misery Fades. Mixing it up, fixing it up, and hopefully helping give some ideas for bussing techniques, vocal processing techniques, and maybe even some ideas towards the master processing. Any questions, give me a buzz or hit me up.